Why do I do Dave's retro reviews? Well, my reason for doing Dave's retro reviews is I like to talk about what I've watched in the past, whether it be a TV show, a movie, a Broadway show, maybe if I've gone to a place or whatever the case. I try to just bring up a little light into whatever it may be. So maybe somebody might want to watch something that's a classic, or maybe go somewhere or experience something that's different. So that's why I do Dave's retro reviews and Dave's movie dailies. That's basically theatrical movies that I've seen lately that you might want to watch either in the theaters, if it's still in the theaters, or if it's for rent or whatever the case. They're not very different, except that Dave's retro reviews deals with a lot older, from whatever point in time. It could be a 60s movie, an 80s movie, an 80s TV show, maybe some kind of something from the past. And you deal if you want to see it, or if you don't. But the movie that I'm going to talk about today is it came out in 1998. It's on Sling. I've never heard of that app. And Hulu. It was directed by Alfonso Cuarón. And it was adapted by an 1861 novel written by Charles Dickens, which followed the coming of age journey of an orphan named Pip. Story explores themes of social class, ambition, love, and morality as Pip navigates his life from a humble background to life of supposed wealth and gentility, only to discover the true meaning of happiness and fulfillment. If you see me looking down, it's because I'm reading my notes. I've never read the book of Charles Dickens, and this is actually known as Great Expectations. This was a 1998 film starring Ethan Hawke and Gwyneth Paltrow. Not only them, but it was also Robert De Niro and Hank Azaria, Anne Bancroft. So the movie dealt with, obviously, it was the 1998 take, because they've done a couple of films based on Great Expectations. But Expectations was a modern day take on the 1861 novel by the same name. Takes place in 1990s New York City, with Pip's name being changed to Finn. The film received mixed reviews. It had a budget of $25 million and it brought in $55.5 million. But I mean, back in those days, 1998, I think that was a lot. I think that might have been for a movie like this, to bring in $55 million for 25, that was actually pretty big. The soundtrack of this film was also something remarkable. So I want to tell you a little bit about this movie. This happens to be my second favorite movie of all time. My first is Baz Luhrmann's Romeo and Juliet with Leonardo DiCaprio and Claire Danes. This is the second one, Great Expectations, with Gwyneth Paltrow and Ethan Hawke. Why do you say? From my childhood, I used to be a very hopeless romantic. Not that I'm not anymore, because I still am. But I used to always dream about falling in love and getting married and finding that one specific person. So these movies always took me on especially when I opened up my mind and I really listened, it took me on a journey. And through this journey, I would find these two characters. That's what a movie's supposed to do. You're supposed to get so enveloped in a character that you get lost within the story. I remember watching this movie about this kid who was on the wrong side of the tracks. He grows up in a poor town, and he runs into this this is spoiler alert. Obviously, I'm telling you about the movie here. So if you don't want to listen, you can stop it here. Go watch it. I mean, it's an older movie. It's called Great Expectations, and you can come back and watch this and see if you agree. But I give you 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. You've been warned. Finn ends up, he's like an artist, young artist, and he ends up running into this escaped convict who literally threatens to kill him if he doesn't bring him certain things in order to because he ends up taking his ID and knows where he lives and all that stuff. So Finn goes and brings him food and drinks and a way to like get himself free because he's a prison breaky, so he has to like break these chains and all that stuff. Then he literally, I mean, this prisoner, I mean, Finn ends up bringing him all this stuff, and the prisoner kind of like wants to take him hostage or whatever. But and they're like on boats. This is like a fishing village, so they end up, Finn's on a little boat, and the criminals inside of the boat, which is played by Robert De Niro. Unfortunately, to the criminals' surprise, this police boat ends up finding Finn in the middle of the sea and stops him and asks him if he's seen this criminal, and he says no. But at that very moment, Robert De Niro jumps out of the boat and he ends up swimming to a buoy. So the cops end up taking Finn and taking him to safety, and Finn ends up leaving a life preserver to Robert De Niro. So he ends up getting taken to the mainland, and he ends up going back to his home, and his sister. He lives with his sister and his I guess his sister's boyfriend. The sister's kind of like she's tired of living in that fishing village and wants more of her to her life, so she ends up sleeping around, and eventually she ends up leaving Finn with her boyfriend, and she leaves him, like she abandons them. The boyfriend is a really good guy, so he ends up taking Finn and raises him as his own. The movie steps forward into the future, and the boy ends up growing into Ethan Hawke. Oh, wait, but before I move into the future and start telling you about what happens within their older age, before his sister left him, they ended up going to this house because the father is like a landscaper of some sorts, and he goes to do a job for this lady named Miss Dinsmore, and Miss Dinsmore ends up seeing Finn, and there's also, she has a niece by the name of Bella. I believe her name is Bella. If not, I'll put it here somewhere and you guys can see. And she's played by young Gwyneth Paltrow. It's not Gwyneth Paltrow at that point. It's just some little blonde girl. And Miss Dinsmore, who was played by Anne Bancroft, is kind of like loony. She's been like brokenhearted because of her ex-love left her, and she lives in this mansion, and she's like very, very rich. But the mansion starts to break apart and fall apart and all this other stuff. So she ends up seeing that this kid Finn is like kind of smitten with young Bella, I think her name was, or Gwyneth Paltrow's character as a little girl, and she ends up telling the boy to go and visit. So he goes and visits, and she wants the little boy to dance and all this other stuff. He's like, I don't do that. And then she's like, so what are you doing here? Because she's loony. So he's like, well, I can draw. And he's like, oh, you can draw? So she ends up ripping part of like the wallpaper, and she's like, draw with this, and gives him some kind of like, I guess, makeup pencil. And she brings the little girl. And the little girl sits there, and he has to draw her, and then he finishes drawing her, and then she tells him, oh, what do you think of her? And she's like, she's very pretty, but I think she's a snob, as a little boy. And then she's like, yeah, but Miss Dinsmore tells him that she'll break his heart, pretty much because she knows about life and how couples end up being, girls who are pretty end up breaking boys' hearts. And she kind of sees Finn as this little mouse, a little scared mouse, and all this other stuff. So like, she knows that he's not the type of person to be the one who breaks hearts. He's gonna get his heart broken. So time goes by. They they get older. They're like in high school and stuff, and he has a huge crush on Miss Dinsmore's niece. I don't want to keep saying Bella because I don't know if that's actually her name, but she they go to like they're in high school together and all that stuff, and he's in love with her, and he's been meeting with Miss Dinsmore and this girl for like throughout their from their childhood all the way to like their young high school years and stuff to like their old high school years. And Miss Dinsmore notices that he's still infatuated with her niece, and the niece utilizes that like to overpower her and use him for what she wants. There's a point where they go into this like gala party or some sort, and he offers to take the niece because she doesn't have a date, and then but he's like, he's broke. He's a young boy trying to just be more, but he's not. He ends up using his stepdad, which is his sister's ex-boyfriend, his pickup truck to take her to this party, and he ends up using the jacket because he needs to have like a blazer, but he doesn't have a regular blazer, so his sister left this blazer. He ends up giving him his sister's blazer, and he ends up utilizing it just to take this girl to the party. And she ends up like, once he goes to the party, she's like, you gotta meet me there, because I guess she's embarrassed. They end up meeting at the party, and she doesn't want to be there, so he ends up driving her away, and they go, she's like, can I go to your house? So she takes him to the house, and this is where she starts using her feminine wilds to like coerce him to try to do stuff sexually, but at the same time she manipulates him and then just gets him all hot and bothered, and then just drops him like a bad habit. The next couple of weeks, she ends up leaving to New York. He finds out that she left to New York because Miss Dinsmore ends up telling him. So at that point, he decides to elect to grow up and be a fisherman, just like his stepfather, if you want to call him that. So he becomes a fisherman. He leaves his artistic ways behind, and he just does what he does. But somebody who sees his work from the past decides that they want to open up a gala in New York featuring his work. So he's like, wait a minute, but I haven't done that in years. And the guy, I guess his name is Ragno, and he's like some kind of like artsy fartsy type guy. So he's trying to get him to like come to New York and open up a whole show on him, and he's like, I don't do that anymore. But then his stepfather, who's played by Chris Cooper, who is his sister's ex, says, no, you're gonna do it, whatever the case, let's just do it, I want more for you, whatever the case. Like, yeah, but I haven't done this in a long time. But he ends up talking him into it. So he goes to New York and he starts to paint and draw, and it's almost like riding a bike. He doesn't lose his flair. He just picks it right back up. As he's in New York, he ends up going to the park. At this point, it's Ethan Hawke. He goes to Central Park, and he's about to drink some water, and all of a sudden, as he's drinking water, it's a scene that happens when he was a kid, as a little boy leaving Miss Dinsmore's house. He ends up drinking a little bit of water from the water fountain, and then the girl kisses him. And now, as an adult, he goes to drink some water from the water fountain, and then Gwyneth Paltrow appears and kisses him again, and he immediately is transported back to when he was a child, and just back to the old feelings that he had with Gwyneth Paltrow. But this is a whole new world. Gwyneth Paltrow's like this rich chick who is like dating Hank Azaria, who's another rich entrepreneur, and he's there to be an artsy fartsy kind of guy. He's supposed to do his gala, and it's just a slew of new things that happen at that point. He goes from being Porsche mode to having to selling out a show and becoming the most wealthiest man, and unfortunately he ends up hurting his stepdad's feelings because of the fact that he's not he doesn't receive him the same way that he would have been when he was poor. He, because money changes you. So that's pretty much what happens to him when Chris Cooper ends up coming to his show. Chris Cooper, he's loud, he's obnoxious, he's not made out of money, so he's not going to be like snobby people. Unfortunately, he's real. He's like talking about fishermen type stuff and all this, and Finn is a little embarrassed. So he ends up hurting his feelings, and then Finn's heart gets broken because the Gwyneth Paltrow character, who is, I guess, Bella, she ends up crushing him once again. And the whole movie's like a back and forth type thing with this relationship where Finn's madly in love with her, and she's jumping back and forth between her everyday life and wanting to be with him, but like knowing that she needs more to live off of, like she wants money and all that stuff. He does end up eventually getting with her, and they end up having a very intimate night, and he paints her and draws her again and all this other stuff, and his gala show is successful. And the way the movie finishes, he ends up going to Miss Dinsmore's house after getting his heart broken one last time. Time has passed, and he's a wealthy guy. He ends up going back to his fishing village to visit where he started. He ends up going into the mansion that Miss Dinsmore had him go to. And he's walking around, and then all of a sudden he hears a little girl running, and it's almost like he was transported back to his childhood, and he doesn't understand what he's hearing. But then all of a sudden he finds out that the Gwyneth Paltrow character, who I believe is Bella, I think that's the name, I don't know if it's Bella, but you find out that she's a mother now, and she's alone. And the way it ends is with them all three, not only Gwyneth Paltrow and Ethan Hawke, who plays Finn, they're staring out into the waters, and the little girl's there, and it's almost like they get a chance. At this point, it's almost like you're getting a chance to see maybe they blossom into something. Maybe after so many years, she's finally going to give him a chance. But then again, who really changes a tiger can't change his stripes. It has to be something coming from within you that you want to change who you are. She's always been money hungry, so she's always been a snob. Could it be possible that she changes her way of being? I mean, Finn is wealthy at this point, so is she going to give him a chance? Who knows? But one of my favorite films of all time. I just love the whole going back and forth, the hopeless romantic thing. Finn being that tiger who changed his stripes and became that lion. He took hold of what he thought couldn't be, and he became that one specific person. And you turn out that the reason why he's so wealthy and so like he sold out his show, and everybody's like, how did he sell out his show? Well, it turns out that Robert De Niro, who played the thief at the beginning of the film, because Finn showed him mercy and kindness, and he saved his life in the middle of the ocean. Robert De Niro ends up getting older, and he ends up keeping track of Finn's career, and he ends up buying his whole show. He buys all the paintings, and because of him buying all his paintings, Finn becomes successful, and they end up running into each other toward the end of the film, and he finds out the truth. Unfortunately, Robert De Niro gets killed, but because of him, his whole life is a success. So I just love the whole idea that he ends up changing. He becomes a billionaire or whatever, and there's a possibility that he might get the girl at the end, even though we don't actually see him get her. But it's one of my second favorite film of all time. So it's out there. Watch it if you like. This has been Dave D. Saint with another Dave's Retro Reviews. And I just reviewed Great Expectations 1998, and I'll see you guys next time.